before we can find x for this question, we need two pieces of information. So in any right triangle, we always need two pieces of information to find a missing angle or side. So with this particular scenario, it is best to look at this triangle on the left. For some of you, you might prefer to actually draw that separately. And so if we put in what we know, 51 and 23, we can find this vertical distance, which will then help us determine x, and then we'll also need to find that horizontal distance at some point. So here, if we're trying to find the vertical distance, give it a label, let's say k, v for vertical if you prefer. Now decide which trig ratio we're going to use to determine k. So in this case, we've got the opposite side and we've got the hypotenuse. So that means it must be sine. So sine 51 equals k on 23. The variable we're trying to solve for is in the numerator. So 23 times sine 51. And then just quickly using our calculator, 23 times sine 51 is equal to 17.87. Now I would go to a few decimal places because this is not the final answer. It just helps us be more exact. So 17.8744. Now the other thing I can determine on this same triangle is this one. I'm going to use, I don't know, h for horizontal distance. So here we've got an adjacent side and hypotenuse, and therefore we can use cos. So just moving up here, cos 51 degrees, that's an S, that's a 5, be careful, is equal to this time h on 23. So h is therefore going to be 23, undoing that time, divide 23 by multiplying, and we're going to now calculate that. So 23 times cos 51, and that gives us 14.4744. So knowing that h, which is this distance here, this bit that we've highlighted on the base of the triangle, knowing that is 14.4744, we can then calculate this distance here, which we might want to call w. And so w is going to be the full distance of 27, subtract that value h we've just calculated. So if we just go 27, subtract the answer we just had in the calculator, we get 12.5256. So we know w and we know this distance here, k, and we are now going to have enough information to find x. What I want to do though is redraw that triangle just so it's not quite so confusing. So that w value, that's the 12.5256. That k value is the 17.8744, and here is x, what we need to determine. So this time we're trying to find an angle, and so we can use well, let's work out the trig ratio. We've got to go opposite and adjacent, which is tan. So tan x equals 12.5256. That's the opposite over the adjacent. And therefore now we need to use the inverse tan. So remember, this time we've got to undo that tan because we are trying to determine an angle. So shift tan. So that first answer, if you want to be tricky, is on the calculator already, and then we can divide by that 17.8744, or you could retype them in. But like I said, at least 4 decimal places, just so our answer is as accurate as possible. And here's our final answer. You can give that to 2 decimal places. So 35.02. Now 35.02 is an angle, so don't forget to add degrees to our units. So that question involved 4 steps. First step was to calculate this vertical distance. Second step was to calculate this horizontal distance. It then helps you determine this distance here, which was step number 3. And then finally, after all of those steps, step 4 was then finding the value of that angle. So quite a challenge.